SprintCarUnlimited.com here with Kevin Nouse. Kevin Nouse Designs, also K1 dealer. Kevin, the suits you guys are putting out right now are really good. I mean, just look at Logan Schuchart, Jacob Allen. Suits really pop, and others. Matt Craftsman, you have some other guys. What is it about K1? You guys are growing in leaps and bounds.
I think the thing that's growing the company so dramatically is probably the customer service. They have the best customer service in the suit business, and the quality of the material. Basically, we're selling a very high quality suit for a fraction of what the big companies do, and along with customer service has drawn a lot of people our way.
Well, the safety aspect, too. You guys are really big on safety. I'm hearing a lot of good things about that. And like I said, the company's growing because you have JR, who's moving from California down to North Carolina. That's a good indication that things are going well with K1 RaceGear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, that's exciting. That's a move that he's actually been talking about doing for the last year or so. And I think it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be very good for K1 RaceGear to be down there in amongst all the race teams and in NASCAR land. And last year we started seeing K1 show up on Sundays and Saturdays on television sets, and that helps sales quite a bit. You know, whenever you have Matt Crafton and guys like that, Jeffrey Earnhardt, there's a bunch of truck guys that are in the suits now. When people start seeing that on TV, you know, it's all about brand recognition. They see K1 on TV, and then they come to a show and they see K1 here. Then, you know, especially with Crafton's suit in the booth, you know, that helps. And just brand recognition is a big thing.
Now, you're also one of the best 358 sprint car drivers in Central PA. And we talked to you earlier on the cushion about racing against your customers. Well, we're not going to go into that, but your 358 career, you got to be really proud of what you've accomplished. You even have a golden driller from down at the week before the Chili Bowl, the Tulsa Shootout. So, I mean, I was surprised. I thought you bought the driller or something, but you won that.
I did. I won it fair and square. I raced my butt off for that one. And like I said, you know, I won a golden driller before winning a golden driller was cool. But it's a really great trophy. It's probably my favorite one that I've ever won. It just has a lot of meaning to me. So, yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's something that nobody will ever take away.
Now, you and I talked on the phone recently about 358s and 360 sprints. And I think there's too many divisions in Central PA. And there's no doubt about that in my mind. You guys all kind of pull from each other. Is there any way to combine the 358 and the 360 division? I know that's something that you and I kind of disagreed on, but you made me see some things that I just didn't know.
Yeah. In my opinion, no, I don't think it's something that can be combined. It's two totally different cars as far as, bolt-on stuff. I mean, the 360s mostly, them guys are running all titanium stuff, which we're allowed to run as well, but you know, my car doesn't have any titanium on it. It has a titanium drive shaft in it, but my brakes are steel, my bolts are steel. I mean, I have no titanium. We don't have the budget for titanium. I think to be competitive in a 360, you have to have titanium, and I mean consistently competitive. You know, anybody can win one race on one specific night, on one specific track condition, but I mean consistently. Mark Smiths and Davey Franiks and the guys that run up front every night and win races, I think you have to have a certain amount of equipment, which means a certain amount of budget to do that. And I don't think the 358 class has anybody in that class right now that could afford to do it. The engines are a huge difference. There's a lot of difference. And like I told you earlier, I think that 360 racers are 410 racers on a lower budget, and I think 358 racers are not anywhere near that on a budget. I mean, I know our race team personally, there's no way we could 360 race, so we couldn't afford to do it. And we definitely can't 410 race. So we're doing what we are comfortable doing, which I think is probably 98% of the 358's, financial situation. I think they're doing what they can do. And if you were to get rid of the 358s and make everybody go 360, you might gain 2 or 3 cars in the 360, but you would lose 30 race teams that would just close up shop, or they would fall back to a 305 or something like that.
I know one of the big differences that you brought to my attention was the torque. Well, I knew about the torque, but you said it's the compression.
Yeah.
And explain a little bit about that compression and how that affects the race car.
Well, compression makes torque, and torque obviously is your power whenever the engine is down in lower RPM. So if you're at Williams Grove or any track where it's not a big sweeping momentum type deal, the torque is a very big factor because it'll pull you from the center of the corner to the exit of the corner or partially down the straightaway. A good example is a 410 versus a 358. At Williams Grove, we're 2 seconds slower than the 410s. Now, we have 50 less cubic inches than they do, but their torque. If you ever drove a 410 and drove a 358, the biggest difference in the world is the acceleration, and that's your torque. That's from the middle of the corner out up onto the straightaway, and that's where the 360s have a huge advantage over the 358s. And torque costs money, same as horsepower does. When you add torque to an engine, you shorten the life of all the components in that engine. Basically you're building a tighter time bomb is what you're doing. And I think the 358 deal where it's at is very good. I wouldn't want them to change any engine rules as far as allow us to have more torque or anything like that. We're running a steel head with a flat top piston. They're running an aluminum head. They can have a dome piston or a pop-up piston. There's quite a bit of difference there. And again, people look at the cubic inch side of it and they say, well, they're 360s and you're 358s, and there's really not that much difference. No, that way there's not. And there's also not a big difference in horsepower numbers. The 360 will only make a little bit, probably more horsepower than what mine does. But the torque is the killer number. And that's why, everybody has this perception that I hate 360 racing. And I love 360 racing.
Yeah, you and I went back and forth about this.
I ran URC for a year. I ran Scott McLaren's 360 a couple races a couple years ago. I love 360 racing, but I don't feel 360s and 358s should race together, nor are they compatible. So, I have a really firm stance on that. And there's other guys that tell me I'm full of it, and it's easy for them to say because they're winning 360 races every week. But it's until you actually sit down and figure out the numbers and you put all the numbers on paper, especially the engine costs. Tire costs are tire costs. It costs me the same thing as it does a 360 team to race on tires. Fuel cost is similar. But components, engine is a big one. And everything with the big 5x5 wing on, you're creating more stress on every part on that race car, on the rear, on the drive line. There's more expense involved, and if you look at it realistically and in that manner, the numbers just don't add up close at all.
Well, you used the term blue collar series for 358s, and I would have to agree with that, even though I do think the cost is high on them.
It is.
And I think it's almost out of hand in some areas. Now, maybe not your team, but other teams. Still, it's still more working man than, say, a 360.
It is. It definitely is. And it is, in my opinion, it's a blue-collar series. The 358s are. I've talked to a lot of 358 teams. With me running the series here the past 4 years, I talked to a lot of teams, and they're doing all they can to make it from every race to every race. I mean, there was guys that didn't run our Port Royal race because they didn't want to pay for the fuel in their hauler to drive to Port Royal. It might have cost them an extra $40 or $50 to do that. And whenever you're looking at a $40 or $50 number, deciding whether or not you go racing, you're racing paycheck to paycheck. And that's in my opinion what 358 racing is right now. It's a blue collar paycheck to paycheck series where I don't see the 360s doing that. I mean, and not that I want to call anybody out, but when Mark Smith stops to fuel up his truck, he don't care what it costs. And it's not comparable. I mean, you're racing against high quality drivers, not to say that there's not high quality drivers in the 358s, but I think the 360s are more of a destination division like the 410s are, and a 360 or a 358 is more of a learning stepping stone division, and there's nothing wrong with going from a 358 to a 360 or a 358 to a 410. I mean, hell, half the 410 field is former 358 drivers. But that's what I think it is. And if people look at it on that perspective and realize that it's a stepping stone division, not a destination, I think that they'll start to see that it's not the same. I mean, it's not apples to apples. It's not comparing apples to apples. I mean, some people make it a destination. Hell, it's my destination. I mean, that's where I race. I love the 358 division. I enjoy it, and that's the part that makes me stay there. Is I enjoy driving the cars. I like the smaller wings. I think it really puts the driver back in the race car, especially when the track gets slick. And there's a lot of things I enjoy about it. I like helping the younger guys, the newer guys. I enjoy that quite a bit. As you move up to the 360 division, into the 410 division, there's very little help that goes on there. It's hard to walk down through the pits and ask a guy for help if you need it. 9 chances out of 10, he's probably not going to be honest with you, and I don't think in the 358 division you get that. I think we're more of a, not that we're a Walton family type racing deal where we don't have rivalries and we don't all want to beat each other, but I think it's more of a family type atmosphere where we're all willing to help each other, because honestly we're all going through the same thing. I mean, again, budget. It's all budget. And you look at the 358s, they don't have big sponsors. They don't have a lot of sponsors on their cars. They're showing up. I mean, Troy Wagaman shows up with an open trailer, that type of thing. And I just think it's a completely different level of racing because it's a completely different level of budget between the two.
Well, you've done something most people don't do, which is convince me I was wrong. Which, no, seriously, I all good arguments, and really the only argument I have is I want to combine everybody so there's a bigger car count, but that's not enough to put other.
No, and in all honesty, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely correct. You look in Central PA, and I was asked this question yesterday. Why is there so many divisions in Central PA? And I don't have an answer for that.
I have one.
Do you?
People can't do what they want to do in one division, so they start another
one, right? Yeah. And it's a thing where, it's, I don't know. It's tough to. It's hard to say. It's the 358 division was started a very long time ago. Late 80s, early 90s. It was started back then. There was no 305s. There was no 360s. It was 410 racing. So if you wanted to race a sprint car, you had to run into 410s. And I'm not even sure they might have been 410s back there. They might have been big blocks. But you had to race with all the big boys. And there was, a group of guys, a large group of guys that couldn't afford to do that. So they went, they started the 358 division. And they showed up at the track with 5- and 6-year-old Ganwar cars and old Osborne cars. And honestly, they didn't put on a very good show. They were cheap. And there was guys out there racing because they wanted to race. And over the years, it's obviously evolved quite a bit. And, the rules have opened up. Whether people think that's a good idea or not, I'm kind of mixed on it. But, it's kind of grown from being the cheap, hey, let's just get and go have fun deal. But it still is reasonable, I think, compared to its alternatives. And, the other divisions have kind of come in. And I said this yesterday with the 360 deal. A lot of 360 racing is huge in some part of the countries. But in those part of the countries, 9 chances out of 10, there is no 410s. They might have 360s and 305s in that certain part of the country. And it just so happens here, we have everything you could ever want. Or more.
I think more. Kevin, thank you very much for coming on the show. If you get a chance, anybody looking for a suit, call Kevin Nouse Designs. Check out the Matt Crafton suit. It's really sharp. It really pops. Again, thank you for joining us in the booth.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.